Good day, and here we are with yet another podcast. Today we're going to be discussing a variety of topics. The first one, of course, is Warhammer 40k. It actually ties back into the very first episode where we asked, is dark for the sake of dark bad? And honestly, I don't think Warhammer 40k is necessarily dark for the sake of dark anymore. When Warhammer 40k first came out in the 80s, I currently could not actually enjoy it due to the fact that I was not born at the time. But had I been born at the time, I likely would have found that yes, it was dark for the sake of dark. And it's mainly because it was supposed to be more comedic in nature than it is today.
Gonna have to take your word for it, because the darkness, the kind of darkness that... Okay, my first and only exposure to Warhammer 40k lore is if the Emperor had a text-to-speech device. Now, I know that this is slightly satire, but it's based on actual fucking shit from the Warhammer 40k universe, and the way they're describing it, it sounds monumentally hopeless and, well, dark for the sake of dark, with no light at all. So, to me, it sounds like dark for the sake of dark, where there's literally no hope for betterment at all. It's like, at best, you can hope for death.
And it is one of those concepts... Okay, Warhammer 40k is a lot like the DC universe, for want of a better word. It's all dependent upon the writer. Sometimes it's a story that's dark for the sake of dark. Case in point, the Last Chancers trilogy. Or there can be some light in the darkness. Case in point, the Caiaphas Cain series. It all varies from writer to writer. And it actually works in universe mainly because in some places, yeah, it is the most you can hope for is death. But in some other places, it's a little bit better. There's a concept that we only really see the exciting places in the 40k universe. That there are many planets and cities and civilizations where literally nothing happens and Bob the accountant goes to work every day and that's it. And there's, of course, there's actually an interesting case where there's a story where they actually do show that. So sometimes it can be dark for the sake of dark. For example, the Bob the accountant thing I mentioned, there's actually a character in a story called 15 Hours who, that's all he does is go to work every day and punch in numbers. Every day. No weekends. And one day off for Christmas. That's it.
Sounds like an absolutely bleak and horrible existence.
Exactly. But not every character has a life like that, though. In fact, one of the early Warhammer 40k books, which was definitely when it was dark for the sake of comedy, actually had a Han Solo knockoff who actually had a fairly decent life. But that's the thing. It all varies from story to story and from era to era, because ever since the 1980s, Warhammer 40k has been changing. It's, in theory, gotten more kid-friendly, but I'm not seeing it. Because, like, one of the first books had the Space Marines, the Spec Marines, scrimshawing finger bones, and had the rather interesting mantra of, to slay is to pray. They don't do that anymore. And probably one of the worst things, well, best, worst, whichever way you want to look at it, is in order to take control of a giant war robot, they had to eat the brains of its crew to get their memories. They don't do that no more either. And also, one of the big bad guys of that particular book was also patterned after Kim Jong-il?
Kim Jong... Well, depending on the era.
This was in the 90s, so the guy before Kim Jong-un, the new guy.
Yeah, Kim Jong-il.
So yeah, basically they had to fight Space North Korea. It's as bad as it sounds.
I suppose, okay, maybe not be as dark as I was led to believe, but still, it doesn't sound Okay, this is me, the guy who can stomach, the Punisher, but I'm the one saying that to me Warhammer 40k might be just a bit too much.
It depends on the story that you read, I suppose. Because there's a lot of different factions going on in that universe. The main Imperial faction can in fact be pretty evil, but at the same time, there's a lot of good triumphant stories as well. If you want a good starting point for like the more heroic stories, then that of course is the Grey Knights trilogy. It's great. Yeah, it's pretty dark, but at the same time, the heroes win and everybody's happy at the end. And the Kane series, that of course always usually has a pretty happy and triumphant ending. There's more triumphant endings for the good guys, which are the humans. Although some people would say they barely qualify as good, but well, they're not actively trying to kill and enslave all humans. But usually there's more triumphant stories than not. There's a few Twilight Zone-y stories where like, and man grew proud, but most stories aren't as dark as you would think. It usually is just humanity has to overcome a tremendous number of odds, which I think is actually pretty good, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, but I don't like the idea of there being constant, never-ending war, where a victory is about as poignant as a loss, and that it doesn't matter.
Well, only in so much as it's kind of like in Gotrek and Felix in the Warhammer universe. Although I will admit, Warhammer 40k is a lot darker and a lot bleaker than the Warhammer universe. By a long shot.
Yeah.
Although not so much anymore. With the Warhammer Fantasy End Times, it's pretty bad everywhere. So yeah. But in Warhammer 40k, it's definitely a lot bleaker. The human society is a lot worse. I think that's what a lot of people have problems with, is the human society in 40k is basically, imagine for a moment, a mashup of everything that was bad with, communist, with the biggest quotation marks imaginable, China, the Soviet Union during the Stalin years, and finally, a little dash of National Socialism all thrown in.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I imagine the Warhammer 40k humans.
But even then, there's still humans that aren't completely crazy either. It all just varies, and when you actually find a legitimately heroic character, it's pretty good to read about. I can really think of, off the top of my head, 4 great heroes from the Warhammer 40k series. There's Justicar Ulrich from the Grey Knight series. He is actually one of the few thinking Marines who isn't just to slay is to pray. Then you got, I can remember his sidekick, but I can't remember, Ulrich from the Ultramarine series by Graham McNeil. Then, of course, there's Cyphus Cain, who is more like a contemporary human. And then finally, there's Eisenhorn, who's great.
Big on Rich, the Eisenhorn trilogy is getting a re-release.
Yeah, I have heard of that, and it's and you know, I honestly am probably not going to get it just because I already have the omnibus and I have the first 2 books in paperback.
Yeah, well, I can't get any of those. I can only get the re-releases. I'll just pray that an omnibus gets released post the 3rd book.
Well, that would be nice. Although, to be perfectly honest, the later Eisenhorn books, by which I mean Pariah, is well-deserved with that name. Why? Because that's a terrible book. Not to spoil, but there is a character that kind of gets shafted. Really, really shafted. But overall, Warhammer 40k isn't as dark as some would expect. I think if you actually got into 40k with like the video game Space Marine, which wasn't out when I got into the series. I got into the series via Fire Warrior. As generic as that game was, I still rather enjoyed it back in the day. And really, the lore is interesting. The concept of this giant conflict and tens of thousands of years of history. It's pretty cool, in my opinion.
That brings me to my next point. When I went to the Lexicanum, if I want to be a pedantic twat, I tried to look up a few, terms, Ultramarines, humans, the Emperor, Age of whatever, doesn't matter. And when I tried to read it, I immediately got a flashback. I was in 9th grade. It was history class. And I was bored out of my skull because it was just the driest fucking lesson in shit that happened that I could imagine. That's the feeling I got when I was reading the Lexicanum.
Well, in all honesty, if you want to actually read up on Warhammer 40k, go to the Warhammer 40k wiki. It actually uses a completely different language style. The Lexicanum is supposed to be more of a historical document kind of concept.
Oh, I thought the Lexicanum was the wiki.
It used to be. Now there's a legitimate wiki now that'll talk about the different books or stories or rule books that certain things happened in, whereas in that it doesn't, because it's just supposed to be like a historical record of some description.
Huh. Neat.
That's the interesting thing about 40k all around is anytime there's a canon discontinuity, you know what you can do?
Yeah, you told me about it. Basically, you say the previous thing was just propaganda in universe.
Exactly, I love it.
Ugh. I find it cheap. The same way I find the thing from Assassin's Creed cheap. What's it called? The Animus?
Yes.
I find that cheap. Basically, it's like, oh, there's a glitch in the game. It's just the Animus glitching out. This game is too hard. It's just the Animus, and the person's memories of that fight were incredibly tough. Fuck off. Because to bring up this old dead horse to beat him again, it's like Elder Scrolls with the modding community. It's okay, we don't have to finish it. The stupid modders will do it for us for free.
What's funny about that is, back when the games used to have multiple endings, you know how they explain that away?
Yeah.
All endings are true! In Dragonfall, all the endings happened. It was called The Warp in the West. Due to multimodal transtemplar demons, everything happened. So that's like one of the biggest ass pulls in RPG history, I think.
Wait, in Shadowrun Dragonfall?
Daggerfall, that's what I meant. Ugh.
Yeah, because I was actually wondering what the fuck we were talking about.
I'm currently high on shrooms.
Yeah. But before this podcast even started, the Journal brought up a topic, as in how to write a story without it being a power fantasy. The impetus being his old fan fiction, where he's in the KOTOR world. If you would like to get the viewers up to speed on that.
Oh god, that would take so long.
Just give them the shortest Cliff's Notes you can get.
Oh god, that would take so long. Okay, in short, here's how that particular story worked. I have a whole 40-minute long video that was a part 1 that I never followed up on, unfortunately, about this story. Essentially, imagine KOTOR 2, for those who played it, the whole story, except with me in it. It's where I'm the actual Jedi Exile character. But it's not just that. Because, see, if it was a power fantasy, it would be just me and my own awesomeness. But I basically, in writing it, figured out I needed some ways to cheat. Because I think that's a good way to avoid the power fantasy, is if you have a cheat. Because why is this one guy better than everyone else? Oh, because he's got this thing that makes him better. But it's not really him that what does it. Kind of like Iron Man and the Iron Man suits, you know? It's like, well, Iron Man's a power fantasy. Well, if he didn't have a suit, he would just be Joe McCheeseburger. But anyway, the basic idea of the story is I wake up on Paragus, and I have attached to my arm this wrist computer with all sorts of knowledge and information on it. But in order to make it not so cheap, I can't access it all at once. And basically, I go through that particular world using that particular wrist gubbin. And basically, the only real differences between my story and the games were really the technology and using genre savviness, so to speak, as TV tropes would say, to kind of get the drop on various enemies. It was an interesting little story that I've kind of added to and taken away from for a number of years now. But ultimately, at no time was I supposed to be this great Superman that everybody could really look up to. I was still just a flawed human being from the 20th century, using sort of 20th century styles. And as time has gone on, I kind of have... I eventually kind of want to write my own story like that, but just not in the Star Wars universe, but sort of with like Star Wars mentalities. Mainly because Star Wars is not very good at the wars part. There's a lot of technology that they use that is basically World War II tech, except with laser guns. So it'd be like... So basically, what the story would end up being is I'd be applying, 20th century war fighting techniques to these rather outdated ones. Because, like, the one problem with Star Wars is they've got, like, one-man fighters, but they're basically using laser machine guns, not, like, over-the-horizon missiles and stuff like that. And so that's KOTOR, in a nutshell.
As penned by John Lutz. But to answer the question of how to avoid writing a power fantasy, well, there's no compact answer that you can find in Reader's Digest or some bullshit like that.
Reader's Digest? Does that even exist anymore?
I think so, yeah.
My God.
It's a combination of things. First and foremost, you have to be able to get over yourself, for the lack of a better word. You need to stop considering yourself the focal point of everything. You need to realize that you are just human number 1 billion on a planet filled with other humans with their own stories, their own views, their own moralities, their own experiences, their own philosophies. The second thing is to study a little bit of psychology, whether through books or experience, though both are preferable, in combination. You study psychology to understand how people get to certain conclusions that are different from yours. Like, don't think that, okay, let's say that for the sake of simplicity, for the sake of making this argument a little shorter than it actually would be, let's say that you are liberal McPot smoker. And let's say your rival in high school was rot-up-ass McConservative. Okay? Now, you would be thinking that the reason why he wants to outlaw pot, outlaw abortion, outlaw everything that isn't the Bible, let's say. Let's make him a complete fucking straw man at this point. Let's say, and you would think like, man, he just wants to do that because he's a total square, because he knows we're having a righteous time, and he wants to take it away from us because his parents told him not to do it, and his parents are like total squares because they hate us because we're young and we know what's what with the world, and they got sticks up their asses, dude. You need to first and foremost step outside of your bubble and look at the situation not as a pot smoker McLiberal, not as you yourself, but look at it as if you were a scientist observing a different species entirely, trying to learn about them.
Squarest conservatus.
Pot smoker McLefty. But anyways, pot smoker is leftiest. But anyways, you basically, why does conservatus have such views? Well, because his parents taught him those views. And why do his parents have those views? Because their parents taught him those views. Why did their parents have those views? Well, maybe they came around to those views because they had some bad experiences in life and figured that this view, this Christian conservative combination, kind of worked to make life better for them, because whatever experiences they had before were absolutely horrendous. Let's say that for fucking conversation's sake, that they grew up in Soviet Russia, and then they moved to America, like Ayn Rand did, and saw the freedom that they had there, and fucking loved it. And like turned to you know Christian conservatism because they figured that that was the way to go if you wanted, you know, freedom and liberty and shit. Then you have to realize that their kids would have had different experiences from them, much different, because times change, days gone by. That type of happy horseshit. They'll socialize with different people. Their own parents will shape their views as well, and it's all these various combinations of also genetics. Genetics play a hell of a factor in that, because some people are like born with a undeveloped frontal lobe because of genetics or some bullshit defect or whatever. That also you got to take into account. Basically, you got to realize that the reason why some people are the way they are isn't because of an active choice, but rather a reaction to their environment or just plain old luck in the case of genetics. Once you realize that, you'll see that your own views are more informed by experiences and reactions to those experiences than actual philosophical basis. And then, once you know that, then you can start forming your own philosophy, your own morals, because at that point, you know where they come from, and you can philosophize about them more than before. And when you can do that, you can get into the minds of whatever character you're writing and think to yourself, okay, why would they have this opinion? Or it's like, how would their personal philosophy affect this choice that they make in this part of the story? You know, shit like that. Basically, at that point, you're no longer writing an allegory. You're not writing a message or a moral into the story. You're writing, as realistically as you can, actual people reacting in a way that they probably would in reality. You're not doing a romanticist novel the way Ayn Rand did, where every character is a representation of an idea or an ideal. You're writing on a novel with characters. You're doing it in a naturalistic way. Now, I'm sort of a proponent of both naturalism and romanticism, but in a mixture. I love
romanticism.
I love symbolism. I love you know, a sort of allegory. I like it when a character represents an idea, but I also like it when they're a character in their own right, when the idea or the symbol or the message never overtakes them, but they make the idea, make the symbol, make the message. I like it also when a character grows as a person, you know, because they had this experience, they change, and their views change accordingly. Shit, I kind of went a little bit off the track there. But yeah, a way to avoid the power fantasy is just to realize that you are not king undefeated on this planet. Because, let's say I didn't convince you right now. Don't you think it's one fuck of a coincidence that the exact views you have on this exact side of the planet just seem to be the right and specifically the correct ones by your opinion, and that everybody else is wrong in the world? And don't you think it's one hell of another coincidence that they think the exact same thing? Basically, in order to not write a power fantasy, you need to realize that you are just a human. Once you realize that, you can start studying humans and human nature, and then you can start writing properly. Because even though Stephen King sometimes used the, you know, chaotic evil villain, he still knows how to write people as people. And that's because I think that he can get outside of himself from time to time, protagonists who are writers notwithstanding. So yeah, that was me philosophizing on the theory of writing.
And I would agree with all that, which is precisely why, in all of my stories, I always had something that gave me an advantage over generic human 1138, because I recognize that. And it's like, how am I going to survive over everyone else who's already died? How would I do better than, say, the character from KOTOR 2? Why am I there? Why not just have it be the exile, who's the main character of that story? I was like, okay, so I gotta have the risk computer. Now, where did that come from? Now, I did eventually come up with an idea for that to work. Now, my earliest stories that revolved around KOTOR, because I love that game so much, in the first one, it was just me. That was it. No risk computer, no nothing, just me. And somehow at age 14 I was supposed to survive all that. Now, I could have, maybe, but probably not. And so I was like, okay, how am I going to survive all this if I'm still just me? And so I basically came up with so many different ways of cheating, but ultimately, let's face it, a lot of stories do that, and it's not really cheating. It's finding a way to succeed, having a better airplane, having a better tank, having a better bomb. That's how it works in real life, Or having a better rifle, having more skills with a rifle, something like that. And so that's how I was able to figure out how to get away from the whole I'm the greatest there ever was. In fact, most of the time in these stories, it was always just me sort of doing the same thing you'd do in said video game, just slightly different, I suppose is the best way to put it. Case in point, the whole Risk computer concept came from, I basically came up with a real meta concept more than anything else. Because the first concept is, how did I even get there? Because that's one of the hardest concepts, is how does this character get where he is? Because you don't want to have just those, it's a special kind of coincidence.
Deus Ex Machina?
That's an ending trope, though, I think.
Technically, yes, although these days it can be anything that gets a character out of any situation, not just an ending.
It's one of those where, the characters are conveniently somewhere. Convenient coincidence, maybe? I don't know.
Fortuitous happenstance, serendipity?
Yeah, something along those lines. But the important thing was that, okay, how did I even get to this place in the first place? Because if you put... It's one of the big problems I've always had with a lot of these self-insert fanfics, is well, how did you get there in the first place? Why are you there? And the whole concept was... So I took it from a sort of a hard science perspective, okay, you are on Earth, okay? You're on Earth 1, let's say it. How do you get from the yellow sun of Earth 1 to the yellow sun of Earth 616? How did you get there? How did you break every law of physics and quantum physics and superphysics and all the rest to get from there to there? And then it basically came to my mind of, okay, if you are moved from here to there, some being of extreme power had to do it. And they had to do it for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, if they did that for that reason, they wouldn't just set you up to die in the first 5 minutes. Because what would be the point? And then basically I came up with the concept of, okay, here's the meta concept. I'm transferred from the yellow sun of Earth 1 to the rock of Paragus in the Star Wars galaxy because some being finds it entertaining. It ties in with the concept of Q-like entities, from Star Trek.
So basically, they wanted a big-ass gladiatorial game.
No, they wanted a video game, but with real people in it.
So they controlled you?
No. They put the... okay, you know how you have an NPC that does stuff? And you watch the NPC do things?
How the fuck did that happen in any game? Okay, I think a better analogy would be this. They wanted to see a Let's Play.
There you go. Well, actually, that's the perfect thing. So, of course, they take the super nerd from Earth to Nerd Central, Star Wars, and how would he do in that particular world? But, of course, obviously, if he can't speak the language or breathe the air or eat the food, he'd die almost instantly, and that'd be kind of boring. So let's give him a cheat device, known as the Game Genie, Risk computer, with all the schematics to not die. But then you wouldn't just take, say, name a generic person.
I don't know any generic persons. I know people who are exceptional in one way or the other, whether it's insanity or intelligence.
Shit. It's not that I don't like the guy, but let's take Doug Walker. Let's take Doug Walker and put him in Star Wars. Other than using his screech attack, he wouldn't last very long, I think. Incidentally, in KOTOR, there is an attack called Force Scream. So other than using Force Scream all the time, I don't think he'd do very well. So you'd want to take somebody like me, not a power fantasy thing, but I've got experience with guns, military tactics and diplomacy, and so I would do a little bit better than, say, Doug Walker. Maybe not as good as, say, like a U.S. Marine or a Delta Force operator or something like that, but once again, there you go. Incidentally, Delta Force operators and U.S. Marines and things of that nature probably know more about sci-fi than you'd think, because a lot of them like to read Starship Troopers. But let's not think about that. Let's think about me, super nerd. That would actually be more entertaining than Delta Force operator waking up going, well, you wouldn't wake up and say Semper Fi, because that's a Marine thing, but he'd wake up and go, let's get to killing. Kill all the robots and win. Whereas with me, it'd be a bit more of an interesting story, I think.
I can't imagine anything more boring than reading military science fiction.
God, you have no soul. Basically, that's what the whole story would turn into. Or it'd basically be less a super awesome ultra warrior, it'd be more like, well, Eisenhower.
Eisenhower?
Yes. General and later President Ike Eisenhower. He's considered one of the great American heroes.
See, when somebody tells me military fiction, I immediately imagine loads of jargon, no character, because everybody needs to follow orders, which means no character, and it's all got to be ultra professional. Otherwise, it won't be military fiction.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far in my story. I'd be sort of like Eisenhower mixed with I would be Eisenhower mixed with Rommel from the German military.
So, I hear you want to be a Nazi, yeah?
God. Now we're really gonna get sued.
By who? Hitler's ghost?
Great, Hitler's ghost!
Now, if that's not a catchphrase, I don't know what is.
You know what's funny? They could make that Uberman's catchphrase. Although I forget which universe that's from, though.
Große Hitler's Geist!
From DC's universe, 616. Although I shouldn't say that. I know what 616 is.
Yeah, it's a Marvel thing.
I think everybody knows that Earth 616 is the mainline it's the mainline Marvel universe?
Nobody cares, Spec Ops. Oh my god, yeah, that's one thing. You know you're getting old when you stop giving a shit about superheroes, superhero movies, and superhero universes. Because I watched the Red Letter Media review of Avengers 2 Age of Ultron. And I was siding more with Mike and Jay when they were sarcastically mocking the man-children who watched this movie. And I was like, oh, yeah, they kind of are man-children. It's a fucking cartoon that just happens to have live actors in it.
Well, and that's not a problem, I think. But at the same time, this isn't... Age of Ultron is not the height of entertainment complexity. It's guys in spandex beating up other people in spandex.
I know, but this is the thing. To me, seeing real people in those fucking suits looks... It's... I would almost say that it's David Lynchian in how surreal it is.
I wouldn't go that far. I will admit that animation probably works a bit better, but at the same time, it's breaking down the barriers to disbelief. Okay, when you see a nice live action movie where there's all kinds of cool shit going on, it's better than just seeing it animated because it looks real, and you can suspend your disbelief easier. Because I think all of us... Hold on, let me finish. I'm almost done. I think all of us kind of want Iron Man or Superman or Batman to be real in some way. Because it's a idealized concept. Whereas if it's just animated, oh, it's just a cartoon, man. Yeah, Iron Man flying around. Pfft, that shit wouldn't happen. Whereas when you see it in real life, it's like, holy shit, it's Iron Man. He's flying around and shooting shit. It's awesome. It's a little
but there will be a difference between that happening in real life. In real life, I guarantee you they wouldn't look nearly as silly as they do in the movie, because the movies are based off the comics, and the comics need to look all shiny and colorful because it's comics. They can afford that stylistic difference. With a live-action movie, it just looks silly. It looks like somebody is cosplaying and trying to take it seriously as a story. That's why I prefer animation. That, and partly because I'm an artist and I have integrity for the 15 billionth time. I like it more when I see it animated, because an animated universe has a style to it. Whereas real people in suits are just real people in suits. Who gives a fuck? Because, okay, you got Leandro Fernandez, you got Riggs Morales, you got Juan Jose Rit, you got... shit, I'm just naming Latinos now. You got... what can I say? They're the ones that come first to my mind. You got Umberto Ramos. You got Giuseppe Camuncoli, although this guy's Italian. You got Todd McFarlane. You got
we've got all these guys with fancy names and just Todd McFarlane.
You got Eric Larson. You got Charlie Adlard. You got Steve Dillon. The thing, every last one of their styles differs from one another, and that's what I like about it. Each has their own unique flavor to them, and I can enjoy their art for that alone, if nothing else. With a live-action movie, it's like, oh, this inhabits the same fucking reality.
But I think that's good. It just makes it more real, you know?
Yes, but it also makes it more boring. Because here's the thing: in order to make me give a shit about a movie, you need to somehow make it look distinct. Good examples are like two movies that I enjoyed. Fight Club. Fight Club looks very much distinct from every other fucking movie that I've seen, and the same goes for Hobo with a Shotgun. At least from the movies that I've seen in the last 20 years. Fight Club has this weird, dirty, almost slimy look to it. Hobo with a Shotgun has this almost, I would almost say, orange-aid look to it, primarily because they use Technicolor. And I like that. It makes it look distinct and unique. And in Hobo with a Shotgun, they love using, you know, color palettes like pure blue, pure red, or yellow, then with green, you know, shit like that. It makes it look distinct. It makes it look unique. It makes it look like it's taking place in a different reality with a different style, because it is. That's why I don't like, you know, live-action movies like that. You know, superhero. I am Thor. Watch me swing my hammer, guys.
Well, honestly, that's coming from more of an artistic perspective, though. So of course you can be excused for be.
Yes, exactly. Because I just care more if there's more. If something looks unique and different, the more I'll like it. Avengers and most superhero movies just look so boring. Oh, well, it needs to look realistic. It needs to look absolutely in line with our world. No, it fucking doesn't. That's another reason. Okay, I'll just use this as an example. Yeah, the Predator Concrete Jungle, the comic. I like the coloring work in that one. I really fucking do. Because it uses lots of reds and yellows to give you a sense that there is a heat wave going through the city. Whereas today they would use realistic colors, but with high contrast shading and a little bit of light and highlights that are white on the characters' faces. Fuck that shit. Be fucking artistic, for fuck's sake. Have some integrity.
Whereas for me, I didn't like the art because I hate late 80s artwork. I always have. It's not detailed enough, in my opinion.
Fuck's sake. Oh, and just to be controversial, I think the Watchmen's coloring sucked. It's just too bright and pastel in some areas. It's just not pastel. It's just too. It's too primary, I think, or some shit. I like the color scheme in the Watchmen movie better because it was supposed to be Watchmen is supposed to be a deconstruction of superheroes, right? So you don't go with bright colors, you go with darker ones, moodier ones.
Well, they are the ones that ushered in the dark age of comics.
Yeah, for what it's worth.
With Bone Kill and Bloodstorm and Kill Blood.
I guarantee you, if we travel back in time and you like took an entire bottle of Jack Daniels and wrote a story on it, and I acted as the extreme superstar artist, we would have made a mint on stupid 90s comic fans back in the day.
Oh yeah, Blood Gun, man. He shoots blood out of a gun, and
Not only does he shoot blood out of a gun, the blood freezes in contact with the air and turns into blades, man.
Blade blood guns.
Exactly. The BBGs.
God, but that's a problem though. I will admit that the color palette on a lot of superhero movies are kind of limited. My biggest problem is more the writing in a lot of these superhero movies are very, very generic. And I know we've already beaten the dead horse of the Thor horse so much, but I'm sorry, the Thor movies suck. The Iron Man movies are poorly written, and really the best Marvel movie to date is still Iron Man 1. Just because it was had much more of an identity and was much more funny, I think, than the others. But I will also say that the Dark Knight trilogy, I think, was better because its color palette was actually a lot darker and a lot more grittier, which really kind of got across the concept of the Batman, Although I will admit this, though. My problem with the whole Dark Knight Rises story is not whatever. What is your problem with Dark Knight Rises?
I'd have to really rewatch it again to give you a full, deep, detailed analysis as I do with most.
Okay, so you love Dark Knight Rises, alright.
No, okay. My problem with it is similar to my problem with Darth Bane. It could have been so much better if it was more focused. It seemed to have, introduction, build-up, crescendo, denouement, and then another build-up, crescendo, and another denouement. Only this one wasn't as big as the previous one.
I guess. My biggest problem was the logic flaws. The idea that Bane would be allowed to control a city for any period of time. Just bullshit.
That's why you can't enjoy Hobo with a shotgun.
Yep, they sent in so many Delta Force operators they'd be dead before they hit the ground. But then again, I hold Delta Force as like the greatest military force in the entire world, so there's that.
But at least Hobo with a shotgun has a good excuse. It's supposed to be B-movie schlockiness.
I know, but I can never appreciate those. But, to be perfectly honest, the biggest problem with Avengers is it feels so safe. I've not seen Age of Ultron, but it feels like a lot of these Marvel movies are just played safe.
Well, considering that Disney owns them now and that they're trying to appeal mostly to the kid and teenage audiences, that's to be expected.
Sad part is they're probably appealing to most people our age, actually. Because that's what we expect, isn't it?
They're not appealing to me.
And that's really a problem. That's one of the reasons why I know Episode 7 is going to suck, is they're going to basically strip out all that's good about Star Wars and just put in what everybody thinks Star Wars is. And that's what ended up happening with Star Trek, is they stripped out everything that Star Trek really was and put in what they thought Star Trek was about. And don't even get me started on this new canon. Holy fucking shit! The fact that they anyway.
Autism incoming.
Hey, if they took something you liked and completely destroyed it, you'd be pissed off too.
What can they take? There's literally nothing that I get. Oh wait, there is. If somebody, no, it wouldn't really work because the book is its own thing, so that can't work.
What is it?
The Warriors. They really can't touch the book because the book is its own thing and the movies are its own thing. So they really can't do anything.
You think so? But what if they made a remake of it?
They really can't because the book will still and forever be here. So, whatever.
Go fuck yourself.
Well, I guess it's because I am so far advanced that I did not get a testicle up in a tizzy just because somebody messed with my child's entertainment.
Well, what if they made X-Men into like something really generic with just crappy characters and Cyclops got killed off in the third movie and all it was about Wolverine? Oh, wait.
Until you got to the Cyclops guy getting killed part and the Wolverine part, you almost perfectly described all new X-Men.
Wow.
Let me put it to you like this. It's the most generic soap opera superhero horseshit that I've ever read. It started off with an interesting premise. What if the X-Men from the past came to the present to interact with modern day X-Men. You know, young Cyclops with new terrorist Cyclops. I was like, you know, this will be interesting. What will happen? And it's like, we get bits and pieces, but then it's like, oh, would you look at this? The old X-Men are kind of fulfilled at the new future world. Oh, would you look at this? Iceman Bobby is having trouble with Kitty Pryde because she is more mature than he was back in the God knows whenever 60s. Oh, would you look at this? Jean Grey and Scott Summers are having trouble with their relationship for the 50 billion fucking time. Who gives a fuck?
Honestly, you know what would have probably been a much more entertaining concept? Is the 60s X-Men getting sent to the universe, getting sent to Basic 616. Because they can't say that Cyclops now is the same character from the 60s, because he'd have to be, like, in the 70s.
Yeah, it's called a floating timeline.
I know, but that's still bullshit. I would like to see 60s Cyclops have to interact with modern Cyclops. I'd like to see all those characters interact with their modern incarnation simply because of the values difference between the two.
Oh, that kind of 60s. I gotcha.
What did you think I said?
I thought you were just repeating the same concept until I thought about it. Oh, he meant 60s values.
Yeah, 60s values.
It would be much more interesting just to see them react to not only the homosexuality being acceptable, but interracial marriages. Oh dear.
I'm not. See, the thing is, though, it would have to be written in such a way where the characters weren't strawmen. It's so easy to do that, to have these strawman characters. For all we know, the original X-Men wouldn't have had a problem with some of that stuff, because just because you're from the 60s or the 50s or any era does not necessarily mean that you're going to be a racist, misogynist piece of crap. You might just be as enlightened as people are today.
Okay, you want to know how you do it then? Just make it a one-shot alternate universe where this shit happens.
Yeah, but what if it's entertaining enough that you want it to last multiple issues?
It couldn't really last for multiple issues, really, more than like 6. It would just be stretching it and doing what Brian Michael Bendis did, having it resort to bullshit character soap operas. My God.
Well, I take that back. Yeah, it might only really need to be around for a few issues, if only because it gets to the point of, what's the point? Okay, so Cyclops from the 60s with 60s values wasn't that much different from regular Cyclops. And after a few minor misunderstandings, everybody's okay. Alright, so we got 2 Cyclopses who act almost exactly alike. What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Although in the all-new X-Men they don't act exactly alike, but they never get to the thing that we wanted to see, namely the clash of the old and the new. It's just oh, what will this relationship turn out to be like? Because Bobby Drake and Kitty Pryde of the future are together. Oh, no they're not. I wonder how past Bobby Drake will react to this. I'm Jerry Springer. Thank you for watching our show. It's like, fuck off. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah,
I mean, I know some people give a shit, but I don't.
Well, and I can kind of agree, even though I haven't read the comics myself. If it's just, oh no, what? Uh-oh, past Cyclops said something intelligent. Now terrorist Cyclops is angry. What's gonna happen now? If it's just that, then yeah, that does get old after a while. It's like, oh, what outrageous thing is past Wolverine going to say? When it gets to that point, then yeah, the writing is pretty crap if that's all they're doing.
This is the thing. I just don't like that shit. I don't like it when you have character relationships. I'm not talking about, relationships, between personalities, let's say that you, me, and Tim move into one room. One room? Well, that'll be a tight squeeze. Into one fucking apartment, right? The relationship part of it that would drive a fictional plot would be how we all interact, what kind of friction it causes, and how much of a story we can pull out of that. The kind of relationship stories I hate are the romantic relationships and the dramatic ironies of the lovers. Because I don't know, for some reason I just fucking hate romance stories. Because, okay, we have this plot that's, for instance, that's about this man who's trying to find out if it's moral to go back into the past and change it if it means saving lives in the future. And then he meets this interesting young woman. Done. I'm fucking done, because I know it'll be a fucking romance subplot.
The romance subplot that says, no, I will enjoy the future now and let the past be the past.
Not that. It's just like, why in the holy flying fuck are you putting a romance subplot here where it's not needed?
Exactly.
What? Are you afraid that people will accuse you of being gay if you don't write in a fucking romance? Are you shitting me? Oh, don't get me started on that shit. It's like, okay, here's the thing. I don't mind a romance subplot if it has something to do with the actual plot, i.e., it could not work without it, or it has some philosophical, symbolic, or allegorical weight to add to the plot. That's good. I like that. It's when we need a sexy woman character. Otherwise, the assholes with the body of a 30-year-old man and a 5-year-old brain will not pay attention to it. I hate that kind of shit. It's the most cheapest fucking shit you can put into a story, because it's literally only there to keep the mental retards nailed to the fucking screen. Oh man, look at this shit. Look at this pretty titties on this woman. Oh man, I can't get it, but the main character can, and I can live through him.
Cletus, this lack. Some vocals never ate a skunk, but then into vocal. Like Cletus, this lack jawed yokel.
I fucking hate that shit because it's so fucking limited. Okay,
admittingly though, this is not to interrupt, but admittingly though, I find romance films to be funny. That was a pastime that Mizio and I had back in the good days. We would often like to watch romantic films literally to mock them. Because they are pretty fucking hilarious. Pure romance films are fucking atrociously bad and funnier than you can possibly imagine if you actually have a brain.
Not for me. I have too much of a brain and I just vomit.
I don't know.
But the point I was going to get to is like, okay, we got this book by Isaac Asimov. He's a good writer. Not exactly flowery prose, but it gets the job done right, you know? We got Caves of Steel. Main character is Elijah Bailey.
Always about the Caves of Steel. If you like it so much, just move there.
We got Elijah Bailey, and he has a robot partner, R. Daniel Olival.
Yeah, he's a robosexual.
If this was done today, Elijah Bailey probably wouldn't be married. He would probably find a young woman who was somehow related to the case and fall in love with her and, like, bet her or some shit. When in the novel, he already has a wife, he already has a son. And they are not main characters, but they do have some sort of role in the plot.
You're right, actually.
What?
That is a fact that you really see these days. Back in the day, people used to be married and had a bunch of kids. Whereas today, they really don't. They really are pretty much single. If you look at all the Avengers, not a single one of them is happily married or even happy to begin with.
In Avengers 2, I hear that Hawkeye has a wife.
Okay, that's cool. But ultimately, most of these characters... Actually, if you look at the Avengers, not to, like, be one of those people like, oh, as you can see... No, but it's more like, it's an interesting observation. If you look at the Avengers, not one of them is really all that happy with life in general. Could that potentially be a reflection of the society that we currently live in?
The thing is, you can say that about pretty much any point in society where nobody was really happy. In fact, if we were all happy, we would have no reason to do anything. We were all just trying to stave off the horrible, horrible bird of prey that is boredom or unhappiness, but trying to achieve something. Hence why we sometimes do prefer it when a character is having the same struggles as we are, because we can empathize with that better, and we can connect to the character and feel that he is somehow more realistic and therefore more fleshed out, more developed as a character. However, I do see your point in that we do need, from time to time, a bit more escapism, in the sense that we need something that's fairly lighthearted, fairly optimistic, let's say. You know, something that will not have us go, my God, this is a horrible fucking existence we live in. For instance, in this small collection, in this like a local magazine that collects short stories, you got a Tim Pratt short story called Impossible Dreams? Yeah, Impossible Dreams. That ends with, okay, this is a romance story, but the romance has bearing on the plot and is important, thank fucking Lord. It ends on quite a happy note, and the man does find, a little bit of happiness, and it's not, cheesy or cheap in some way. It's actually fairly well written in that something has to be given up, both characters have to lose something in order to gain something. It's slightly bittersweet, but ultimately it's a win. Sometimes we just need that, and I'm saying this, the asshole who thinks that Stephen King's Thinner or Fyodor Dostoevsky's House of the Dead and the Gambler, or what else that's depressing that I read? Oh, Cormac McCarthy's Child of God. I'm the kind of dude that reads that shit and says, oh man, this is fucking interesting. Even I sometimes need to read something that's light and positive or some shit, Or at the very least, something that's relaxing, like Aliens, the novels.
Although, incidentally, that's one of the reasons why I rather like the Gotrek and Felix stories, is the two main characters usually win at the end of each story, but to get there, they had to really slog through a lot of difficulties.
Yeah, it's the TV Tropes article of Earn Your Happy Ending, where, yeah, they do get a happy ending, it's just they have to work for it and sometimes lose something in the process.
And nobody really gets red-shirted. Anytime somebody does, the actual main characters, well, Felix at least, cares. If only you had read Dragon Slayer. There's a really cool scene in that.
There's a problem. I can't get the fucking omnibus to save my life. I really can't. It used to be on sale. That's the second omnibus that contains Dragon Slayer, right?
Yep, Dragon Slayer, something or other. Everything is ends with Slayer, I forget. Oh,
yeah,
that reminds me. As of right now, the last book of the Gotrek and Felix series has been released.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to read it because, well, let me put it this way. When the subtitle of it is Book 1 of 2 of The Doom of Gotrek Gurnison, I don't want to know how he dies. And obviously he has to die, right? Otherwise, why did it say it's his doom? Unless it's a metaphysical doom of some description.
Ugh.
It's kind of like the search for Spock. It's in the title. Well, what are they going to do? Not find him? Well, it was the search for Spock, right? We spent the entire movie searching for him, and he wasn't there. Speaking of search for Spock, I actually rather like that movie. I'm glad they didn't go the generic route of putting him in a robot body. Cyber Spock. But I'm wondering where they're going to get... Why they decided to finally get rid of the Warhammer Fantasy series,
As you said it probably wasn't popular enough.
I mean, was it really selling that bad?
I wouldn't know. But the problem is, I don't see why it would be a problem. It's essentially... It's essentially World of Warcraft, but done right.
The problem with 40K. 40K is vastly more popular. Everybody loves 40K.
Yeah, but still.
Well, honestly, I won't say that 40K is dark for the sake of dark, not to interrupt, but I'm just going to say I think it's kind of a more generic setting than Warhammer Fantasy is.
Makes sense. Plus, Warhammer Fantasy is Warhammer Fantasy is similar to... Warhammer Fantasy, the best way to describe it is like modern-day pulp. Or at the very least, the Gotrek and Felix novels that I've read. Modern-day pulp, in the sense that it's high adventure. You get a story, you get a, crescendo, then you get, characters being awesome. But it's written with more quality than, you could expect from pulp magazines back in the day.
Exactly.
And I don't see why that should be canceled. That, in my opinion, is something that's needed more of. Because you got these highbrow fantasy cycles and sagas and wheels of timeliness or whatever bullshit. And they have these messages, whether social or philosophical. I'm looking at you, Terry, whatever the fuck your name is, Goodkind, with your objectivism.
Yeah, it's a good thing you didn't say Terry Pratchett, otherwise half of England would invade.
There's three Terrys. There's Terry Goodkind, Terry Pratchett, and Terry something or other. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But yeah, Terry Goodkind. I hate messages and stories. To put a caveat on that, I hate messages and stories that are overt, that are obvious. I prefer it when it's weaved in subtly, where, you know, repeat readings or when somebody actually points it out to you, you notice it for the first time, and you actually take an interest because you see how well crafted it was that you didn't notice it at first. It was that fucking subtle. Whereas any idiot can write an overt fucking message into the story. I can do that when I'm fucking drunk or high, even though I only ever got tipsy once and never got high. But point is, I can do that.
Sure you didn't.
Yeah, well, I denied it. It's up to you. It's up to you to prove positive. Not
Sure you didn't.
But anyways, where the hell was my point? My point being, it takes actual skill to sit down and think, okay, how the hell can I write this story, and then how can I maybe base it around my message or view? Because here's the thing: you actually have to, when you're writing a message, and a story around it. It's easy to write it, quote unquote, because
the heroes and villains are the direct antithesis of your views. I am pure evil, because being evil is good, or some shit like that.
But writing a story and a message around that is much more difficult, because now you have characters being characters instead of just vessels for your message. They have personalities, they have nuances, they have subtleties, they have wants, they have desires, they may have contradictions. So you have to weave it carefully, painstakingly. You have to know psychology, sociology. You have to know, you know, how people act in certain situations, how they react, why others act this way, why others act that way. You have to ask yourself, would this be logical? Would this be illogical? Would this be good in a narrative sense? Would this be good in a pacing sense, etc., etc.? It takes more effort and takes more thinking, and it takes a whole lot of more nights just working on the fucking thing. But in the end, it's worth it because it has a better quality. And above all, you always have to assume, like Valve, it's like, but sir, it's already perfect. We can make it better. Because there's this author, Peter V. Brett. I like this first book, The Painted Man. It's just
God, that guy.
Yeah, yes. I don't know if I talked about it in any other videos that I was in with Jonathan, but Jonathan John. The Painted Man, or The Worded Man if you're in the US, was good. It was fast-paced. Every single page and chapter informed you about something in the world. It was awesome. Second book contained a big chunk of book that was a flashback to a character's history, but was still okay, moved the plot along. Didn't read the third or fourth books yet, because it just haven't gotten around to it. But from what I heard, the pacing slows down to a goddamn crawl. And Peter Brett, basically in one interview, he said in response to it's just like people have criticized your books, blah blah blah. Do you ever look back and think, oh, I could have done that better? He's like, no, I'm always happy with all of my books when they finally get released. If I wasn't, I wouldn't have released them, or something along those lines. So basically, what the message I got was, he never second guesses. He never looks at his work and figures, I can do better than this, and he basically has no problem with what he's written, and he just, brushes off, criticism. That's a very... What?
I was going to say, which is a very bad idea. When you have that kind of hubris, you could release something that's complete crap, like, say, Episode 1, or
Episode
Kingdom
2.
of the Crystal Skull.
Exactly. And that's the problem, because at that point, what's the point of writing if you can't take much criticism? Because here's the thing. There's nothing... If you as a writer can admit to me, well, maybe this is because I actually know, how to write. But if you admit to me that, oh man, yeah, that book, I like it, but I could have done it so much better, if it wasn't for X, Y, and Z. I would have a lot more fucking respect for the guy than, it's like, oh, I'm happy with it. It's perfect. Fuck that shit. Because here's the thing. If what people are saying about books 3 and 4 about the Demon Cycle, which is Peter V. Brett's books, are true, then he literally just had an idea for like 1, maybe 3 books, for 2, maybe 3 books, but then stretched it out for whatever reason. Maybe his publisher forced him. Maybe he just wanted more money and his publisher just went along with it. But to put it simply, he's an artist, but he has no integrity. Yes, I will beat this horse into the fucking ground.
Well, talking about artistic integrity, I've had some ideas for continuing the game development. And one of the things, if ever the young man and I actually got any game off the ground, we would both savage it unmercifully to make sure that when it finally got released, it would actually, work. Because recently, I showed the man this video of all these shitty Steam Greenlight releases. Oh my good god. What was that one that like had this big emotional saga of some description? It was some sort of zombie game, I think.
Insomnia?
No, it was a zombie game.
Slaughtering Grounds?
Yeah, that's the one. Well, actually, go on.
No, the point of making games is it's like have an idea of what you want to make, but always be aware of your limitations. For instance, the little 2D RPG you made with RPG Maker VX8, that's a good starting point because it's simpler to work with. It's much easier to custom make, assets for it, art assets. It's much easier to code for it. It's much easier to write for it. The gameplay is much easier to modify and shit. It's much easier to animate than, say, Slaughtering Grounds, which requires a hell of a lot more work. Because to do something like that, you need to be a little bit more professional than two guys in a fucking garage.
Pretty much, for those who don't know what the Slaughtering Grounds is, it is a first-person shooter that uses nothing but pre-bought assets.
Exactly. The thing is, the General used, pre-made assets. It's just that he wasn't charging $10 for it.
Exactly. I charged $0 and still nobody played it.
I played it. Some other guy played it.
But yeah, I mean, like, I made that game in 3 days. 3 days! And really, I think it probably took less than 2 days to really make, and then it was just a whole day of... I had 3 people, including myself, trying to find every bug and every issue in it. And that was for a game that nobody was really going to play. It was a practice.
The thing is, I think the guy who made the Slaughtering Grounds thing, well, he wasn't an artist and he had no integrity. Yes, I'm still beating this thing into the ground. He just wanted to make a quick buck and he saw, games. These indie gamers, they're making so much money, why can't I join them? And apparently I turned into Barney the fucking dinosaur, or Tristan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged. But, yeah, I think he just saw it like, a cheap money-making gimmick, which is sad but true. People do it. People do it with fucking books. I mean, shit. Locally, some obvious ripoffs of 50 Shades of Grey were released when the book became popular. Fuck. Let's not even get into the supernatural romance for teenagers when
my god,
when Twilight took off. I mean, good god, you got what? You had angels, you had devils, you had vampires, you had werewolves. What the fuck ever? Everything under the moonlight.
Because as we all know, all supernatural romances take place at night. Yeah. I actually had an idea to make a game using an engine you can buy off of Steam called Steelworks. It looked like it might actually be somewhat easy to use. And the whole idea behind making that game was to make a first-person horror game somewhat like Alien Isolation, but instead with a mad AI of some description. Oh wait, that's System Shock. Fuck. Ultimately, the whole concept of the game revolved around one single gameplay idea that I had of trying to avoid damaging sunlight. Essentially, you're on a spaceship flying too close to a sun because something went wrong on it, and you have to, like, shut windows so you don't get hurt by the sunlight. There'd be more to it, obviously. I call it Johnny and the Clonosaurus.
It's Timmy and the Clonosaurus, I think.
Oh, whatever. For those who don't get the joke, that's a Simpsons thing where Principal Skinner wanted to create a complete rip-off of Jurassic Park, and then Apu spent, like, a few minutes complaining about how bad of an idea that was.
So basically he was channeling me.
Exactly. But the idea... But I haven't really spent too much time thinking about the idea. But the idea was you have to avoid sunlight, because it'll hurt. Like, it'd be a lot of puzzles that way. Like I said, I haven't given it that much thought. It came to me in a dream. Like the speed of light equation came to Professor Farnsworth in a dream. But then he forgot it in another dream.
Came to me in a dream.
But yeah. Futurama. That's an we'll close out the podcast with Futurama, just because it came to my mind. Now, this is actually an interesting debate that the man and I had. He probably doesn't remember it. the art style in Futurama, I think it actually looks better than the art style in The Simpsons. Why?
Mm.
Because I think the faces look more realistic and are more expressive, and overall, everything just looks better animated and better designed. There, I said it.
I think they all look more the same amount of expressive, but I think the reason why you like Futurama better is because the humans are, you know, well, at least the white humans are properly colored. With the Simpsons, the white humans are a garish yellow, so they constantly stand out. And
you're making me sound like a horrible racist.
Am I wrong?
Well, yeah. I don't judge them by the color of their skin, but by the value in their hearts.
They're white people. You can't be racist against white people. It's like let's like enter the 21st century with us, Grandpa. But anyways, with the Simpsons, everybody but the whites have, you know, their properly colored skin. You know, Apu is a shade of brown. Carl is a darker shade of brown because he's a black guy.
You can't say that. That'll make you a misogynist.
But with Futurama, whites are, you know, peach colored. Blacks are the same color as they are in Simpsons. Indians are the same color as they are in the Simpsons, etc., etc. Hence why in Futurama you prefer it that way, because everybody is their proper, you know, natural skin color. Whereas with the Simpsons, something is off, namely the whites, or in this case, the yellers. But anyways,
my God, people are gonna this could, if I was more popular, people would draw so many wrong conclusions from everything that was just said. It's not even funny.
Who gives a fuck? But yeah, that's the problem. That, and I think Futurama may use a slightly less bright color palette for its surroundings and shit. It might be, you know, a less obvious, you know, than the ones used in Simpsons, where they're, you know, bright, super cartoony. With Futurama, they're a lot more subdued, you know. But that may just be me. But the one thing I will say about Futurama is that the earlier seasons were better pre-cancellation from Fox. When they came back to what's the name?
Comedy Central.
Comedy Central. When they came back to Comedy Central, it just became kind of shitty, because the thing is, they had these forced, you know, what's the word? You know, emotional scenes that just didn't work. The reason why they were so good in the original, you know, Fox Futurama was because they were few and far between. So you remember, fuck.
Nah, you'll be fine. That's why you shouldn't smoke so much.
So you remembered each and every one of them, or at the very least most of them. Like, you know, Jurassic Park, Fry's nephew, all that shit. I can't remember the others because I have a shit memory about cartoons that I haven't watched in a dog's age.
Jurassic Park, though. My God.
Personally, I preferred the one with his nephew. I thought it was much better than the Jurassic Park one. But,
yo, monster!
And I'm yeah, it's ironic because you're the guy who doesn't really like dogs, whereas I think they're fucking awesome. But anyways, with the Comedy Central reboot, almost every other fucking episode, or at the very least it seemed like it, had an emotional moment, primarily between, you know, Leela and Fry, and God Almighty.
But I always thought that was a natural evolution, though.
No, there's a difference. I didn't mind the idea of them, you know, being closer as a couple. I just minded the fact that almost everything had to be heartwarming and emotional. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, not every day in a couple's life, I know, not every episode includes every single day consecutively, but still. You know, it's like, it's okay to see them fucking sitting on a couch and farting. Jesus Christ.
I never did that.
Ugh.
But I get what you're saying, although when it came to my life, well, stuff like that didn't happen. But anyway, I think the interesting thing about Futurama is it started out kind of like The Simpsons with just a bunch of random sketches, but over time it got more and more serialized, and well, not serialized. What was it? What am I thinking of?
It had more continuity.
Yeah, it had better continuity over time, to the point where it was less a comedy show and more of just, well, for want of a better word, an animated sitcom. In some respects.
Oh, pretty much, yeah. The thing with the reason why Futurama is better than The Simpsons, in my opinion, is that it had more a more coherent story. With The Simpsons, it usually starts up, plot A begins and then gets dropped because plot B has emerged, and now we'll follow that.
Exactly. Simpsons. When The Simpsons first came out, it was an animated sitcom, and now it's just a sketch show, and that's it.
Whereas Futurama had a more coherent story, more coherent writing. There may have been something in the beginning, pre-intro that happened, but that was really just a sketch. Everything else was, plot and shit.
Exactly. And I think what we've seen now with a lot of these animated shows is the writing has just gotten so crappy over time, especially The Simpsons. I know that many people have liked the Simpsons and Family Guy crossover. But honestly, I stopped liking The Simpsons and Family Guy both about the same time because they got way too political. They were less about the comedy and more about making a political statement, which really just got so annoying after a while. I mean, sure, South Park did it, but they did it for both sides, not just the one.
They did it for Christians, Muslims, Scientologists, atheists, and my personal favorite, agnostics.
Well, fuck you then. But anyway.
What? You can dish it out, but you can't take it?
Exactly. That's exactly how it goes. But seriously, though, South Park basically complained about everybody and showed all their foibles, whereas, Simpsons, you know what the first bit of it was that really annoyed me?
What?
For the longest of time, they would have some political satirizations and stuff like that, but it was never necessarily blatant, And it was still funny, right? There was an episode, it was a Treehouse of Horror episode, and I'll never forget this, because that was the moment I stopped watching The Simpsons, is when they satirized the Iraq War by comparing the U.S. military to invading aliens. Now, that annoyed me for a wide variety of reasons, because it wasn't subtle, it was just nailing you on the head, Iraq War bad. It's like, is that really why I'm watching The Simpsons? Do they really need to be making this giant political message? And while at the time I didn't even really support said war, I didn't like seeing it in The Simpsons, because it was just like, is that really necessary? And then, of course, there was Family Guy, who likened McCain to the Nazis, which I thought, that was a little much. That wasn't even funny. That didn't even make any sense. Really? And it was just it was stuff like that just really started pushing me away from those shows.
It depends mostly on the writer, because the Family Guy writing team really is just is sometimes completely what's the word I'm looking for? Inconsistent. Because sometimes they will actually have episodes that are, let's say, moderately entertaining. Like the one that happened previously before Fighting Irish. I can't remember what it was called. The Roast of Peter Griffin. It's essentially a rehash of an episode where Roger from American Dad gets roasted. But still, it was all right. And
I suppose. I still like that one speech to the Brian character. I found that one quite amusing.
You see, I don't mind the speech. I just mind who's giving it, because it seems so forced for it to be Quagmire that hates Brian. Why does he hate him? It's like, why him? Why not Joe? Why not Lois? Why not Chris? Why not Meg? Why specifically Quagmire of all people? Because it just seems so out of left field. And it's like, at the start of the episode, he just fucking hates him. Okay. And then he continues to hate Brian all the way to the roast of Peter Griffin and probably beyond. It's like, why? Quagmire, you're hardly any better. You see a teenage girl tied up in a bathroom, completely vulnerable. Your first reaction is, "Dear Diary, jackpot. I'm sorry. Yes, Brian is a shitty father, but he did not, get excited at the prospect of raping someone."
My God, are we really having this argument?
Yes, we fucking are. Because this is shitty writing 101. Because it's like, why Quagmire of all people? For fuck's sake, what's the name of Lois's father? Carter. Carter has more of a reason to be a dick to Brian because Brian impregnated. No, not Brian. It was somebody else. It was the doctor, or was it Mayor West who impregnated Carter's bitch? I mean this in a literal sense. His female dog. But, or was it some sort of political figure?
I don't know, and I don't care.
I don't know. It's these details that drive me insane. But yes, I'm still fucking pissed at the illogicality of Quagmire being the one to hate Brian. Fucking why?
Because that's why. I still like the speech though, because it just seems like a nice fuck you to a lot of people who think that the Brian character is this paragon of all liberalism, when in fact he's a very bad example.
The only times Brian works as a character is when he's paired up with Stewie and they go on crazy adventures.
So when they avoid politics, then.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. Politics does not work as a storytelling medium. It's just one. Okay, since you can really make politics. Here's my thing about politics. You know what politics really is?
Dick wagging?
More or less. You got one idiot who thinks they know everything, and a bunch of other idiots who follow them. You got another idiot who does the exact same thing, and usually they're still talking about the same stuff. But you want to know what I finally realized?
What?
Both political parties, both political spectrums are more or less the same as each other. It's just some idiot who wants power over everyone else, and uses his minions to get said power. And when he gets into office, he does nothing what he said he was going to do, and basically just makes things worse.
Well, you see, if we didn't vote for Obama, none of this would have happened.
I honestly don't think any of the other choices would have been that much better, to be perfectly honest. That's the problem. Mainly because a lot of the stuff that they vote on and vote for doesn't really affect them. It affects people like you and I. Well, not you, but me. Because you're in a completely different country. Yeah, it might affect you. If you had any oil, you might need some freedom.
Speaking of something, when you people get all up in a tizzy about Hillary either winning or losing the 2016 election, I just like to tell you that Croatia got a female president first, and ours is hotter by virtue of not being over the age of 5 million BC.
Well, there's that. But that's the problem, though. Just because Hillary's a woman doesn't mean she should win.
Hillary Clinton is so old you could use her bones for fossil fuel.
My God, that's wrong in so many ways. Well, I just ended up on the list, I think.
Well, fuck it. If you have, then I have as well.
Yeah, but you're in a different country. They're not gonna kill you.
So you think. It's like, hell hath no fury like a woman who's been insulted about her age.
But you know what I used to say when somebody said that? Hell hath no fury like a woman X. Be like, is that really true? Can a woman summon demons? And I'm not talking minions. I'm talking demons. Can they perform a satanic ritual and bring forth demons and hellfire? No. So apparently, not as powerful as hell. Just saying.
But to the question, can they bring forth minions? Yes, they can. They're called beta white males. Beta white males, beta white knights. Jesus Christ. Most of them happen to be white, though, yes.
Well, it happened to me, but there's that. And usually they're the people that are dumber than a box of rocks anyway, but that need not concern us at this juncture. All right. So I think this has been yet another good podcast. You got any other topics to bring up?
shit. Hold up a second. I'll think of something eventually. Yes. Why the hell do you keep linking me to the Nostalgia Critics? First there was the Ewok review, and then it's something else.
Because it's funny.
No, it's not. It's sad at this point.
Well, that's true. Oh yeah, that's what we can talk about. To end out the podcast today, we're going to talk about the decay of the Nostalgia Critic and the AVGN. Even though in a few previous videos, both the M-Man and I have complained about Linkara, he actually has maintained a pretty good standard of quality.
Pretty much. For whatever I say about Linkara, and I've said quite my share, I never once denied that the man does his work. And unlike Doug Walker, he never seemed to... Okay, he did decline in quality for me, but he never really seemed to become shitty like Doug. He never seemed to lose interest. I think this is primarily because Doug is not a movie man. He's not a TV man. He doesn't know anything about writing. He doesn't know anything about philosophy. He's just Joe Bubba Cletus dipshit who's watching his big screen TV. He's going to be paying off for the next 15 years because he wanted to watch the big game on the big screen.
I don't think he's that stupid, though. I think he means well, but he doesn't necessarily know what he's talking about. That's the problem. I'm hyperbolizing, but yes, you summed it up quite well. He doesn't know what he's talking about. With Linkara, at the very least, he studied English in college with philosophy. I don't know which was his minor and which was his major. It always mixes in my brain. But Linkara, at the very least, has some sort of basis for it all. And he's read quite a few comics. He can talk about these things. And the same goes for the Nostalgia Critic. She, at the very least, studied movies while in college. So she can talk about, animated features, live-action features. She can philosophize about that sort of shit. As can Kyle Calgren, Owen's Citizen, or whatever his name is. He's a movie snob. Not a cinema snob, but a movie snob. Hoity-toity art films and that sort of shit. And the same goes for Brad. He loves movies. He can philosophize about them endlessly. Whereas Doug, he's just a pedestrian. He doesn't necessarily go as in-depth as you'd necessarily want him to. And really, a lot of his humor mainly just is kind of basic. The best humor he actually ever used was just the cutaways to other movies.
Exactly.
And of course, his best joke isn't even a joke. The one joke that everybody remembers, of course, was just playing the M. Bison clip.
Ugh.
Of course. Dun-dun. I'm not saying that I'm like a superior reviewer or anything like that. I'm simply saying that he's considered a god amongst the internet, or was at least.
No, a god amongst artists.
Well, no, you have to admit... No, see, the thing is, the only reason that I think you and I both can complain about him and the AVGN is because we used to hold that... We both used to think he was the god of the internet.
Yes, but I have a very good excuse. When I started watching the AVGN, that was in... When was that? 2007, I think?
8.
Yeah. No, I started watching him in 2007, I remember. I started watching him in 2007. I started watching Nostalgia Critic in 2009. So I was still in high school.
So you're going for the AVGN first, then the Nostalgia Critic. Because I was saying that the Nostalgia Critic didn't really get started until 2008.
Yeah.
But the AVGN got started in 2006. So yeah, that would make sense.
I know. I started watching AVGN in 2007 and Doug in 2009. So I was still in high school, so my tastes were still developing, right? Today, I tried to watch some of his older reviews, and they were both simplistic and not that funny.
I don't think it was necessarily your age. I think it was because he was such a new kind of concept. I mean, like, I was, of course, a lot older than that when I discovered him. But I think it was just, here's this new and fresh comedy guy, and he's talking about movies that we actually watched and liked as kids. And he's tearing it down and all that. But I think it was a very superficial kind of comedy and a very superficial kind of review. And I think we just didn't really know any better. And now that we've got reviewers on the internet who are able to mix humor but actually able to go more in depth, we're starting to see that Doug Walker and the AVGN weren't quite as good as we remember.
Exactly. It's kind of like the idea of the legendary pulp writers from the olden times. Back in the day, sure. You know, like Varney the Vampire was considered something for the masses. It was considered something brilliant because it got to page 800 something. But today, not so much. Tastes have changed.
Or, I hate to say it, Conan the Barbarian.
I never read Conan the Barbarian, but I at the very least know something more about Varney the Vampire than I do about Conan.
Well,
I will have to read some of his stories sooner or later, though.
They're not bad, but they're not as amazing as you'd think. Or, once again, we got also The Lord of the Rings. We really just know about... Back in the day, it would have been considered great, but when you spend the first 2 chapters on nothing but fucking pipeweed, I'm sorry, that's just a little hard to get into.
I really don't mind that kind of shit. If it's written if it's prettily written, I don't mind it because I'm the kind of guy who's like a stickler for some pretty fucking prose. Because, well, look, if the prose is shitty, it's like saying this car is amazing. It's incredibly sleek and beautiful, but does it move smoothly? No, it's kind of jerky and it moves like 5 miles an hour. It's kind of difficult, but look at it. It's pretty. Who gives a shit? I need it to be pretty and to move smoothly. And from what little I've read of Tolkien, that's exactly what his prose is like. It's smooth, it's flowing, but then again, he was a linguist, so he would know, you know?
Well, yeah. But back to both Nostalgia Critic and AVGN, I think what we've actually started to see is a lot of his humor has especially with the Nostalgia Critic, a lot of his humor has gotten really, really tired over time. His shorter videos, I think, were actually the best, but the inverse is true when it comes to the AVGN. When he actually got rid of the whole fuck, shit, cock, cunt, and actually was like, oh yeah, this is how you do this in the game, this is what you do, how you need to do it like this in the game. That was the more entertaining bit from him, I think. Now it's literally nothing but just fucks, cunts, and shits. That's it. And it sounds so forced, it sounds so fake, that it's like, can't you just be like you were before and just talk about the game instead of just shouting out fuck in 15 different derivations?
Oh, what can I say? You pretty much nailed it.
God damn it.
And not only that, but I think people have gotten, wise to the whole caustic reviewer type of thing, because these days you got people whom I watch more infrequently, but enough to keep up, like Bennett the Sage and you. Well, when you put up a review, because you might get pissed, but you'll still give us an actual fucking review where you critique a game instead of giving us a rundown of the plot with commentary interspersed within.
Which is really annoying. That's one of the things that the Nostalgia Critic does that I really hate. Don't just, let me put it this way, whenever it comes to reviewing, don't just give a synopsis that don't just put into words what I could read off of Wikipedia.
Exactly. I remember when I was in high school, we had like this little project where we had to read a book that we wanted. Like, for instance, if you read, horror books, you would read a horror book and give a report on it. Essentially, it was like a mini review in some respects. And I remember our teacher telling us that we cannot give a synopsis because a synopsis isn't a report. We had to say why we liked it, what we liked about it, what we thought could be done better, its virtues, all that shit, without giving a synopsis. It seems that Doug and his crew never got that memo.
Because, and AVG in its later years.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. If you do it like Mr. Plinkett, that's one thing. That's one thing. The synopsis helps him clarify his points because the critique is the main part of the review. Not like with Doug, where the main thing is the synopsis and his snappy little quips. It's with Red Letter Media, it's the actual review, the actual critiquing that they're doing. Especially in their, half in the bag, best of the worst, and pre-rec. Well, okay, not pre-rec. I didn't watch a single episode, so I can't really say.
I'm pre-rec, although I've never seen it myself.
Okay, hence why half in the bag and best of the worst don't use bullshit extraneous footage like that unless it's to prove some sort of point. Now, the Nostalgia Critic fanboys might be like, but Doug uses clips to illustrate a point as well, otherwise he might say, oh, the character flew out the window, when in fact they could have just jumped out the window by opening it and not crashing through. Big fucking difference. He doesn't have to make a synopsis of the entire plot. He can do that in like a few sentences and then start criticizing the character development, the lighting, the cinematography, the pacing, the issues with character motivations, that sort of shit. But no, instead he gives us a blow-by-blow and some commentary to go along with it. It's bullshit.
It really is. I mean, one of the big problems with doing any review is it still needs to have more content than you'd get out of a Wikipedia article. And,
exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why I started watching that Oliver Harper guy, is because he talked about the production and all those little minutiae elements like that, while still being somewhat humorous now and again. Well, his is more of a documentary kind of thing. And really, I think some of his best videos are where he has two co-commentators.
Exactly. Which reminds me, I hated it when in the Nostalgia Critic or whoever, they had this guest reviewer onto the show, where basically they had the exact same opinion and just switched who was saying which line.
That, and well, it always sounded very forced. It really.
Probably because it was.
It just didn't have a lot of good chemistry. The best co-op review I ever did was the ones with Mizio, because we had a lot of good chemistry and we said pretty much the same things, and we still were able to had deprecating humor to each of us, which I thought was pretty good. One of the big problems with the Channel Awesome people is they always have to have that element of conflict between each other that I don't think even really exists in real life, and most importantly, isn't necessary. You know?
Exactly. The conflict can come from diverse opinions on a piece of work. For instance, you put us together and give us a little piece of paper that says Dragon Age 2. There we go. We're off. We're talking about it, and we don't need false conflict.
Exactly. And we also saw that with OpenGL in the Mass Effect review. Talking about FemShep versus MaleShep. Which one's the best? And it wasn't this forced conflict, it was a difference of opinion, which you shouldn't create false conflict. You should have legitimate conflict drive the humor. Exactly. If that makes any sense. So basically you need to have less fake punch-ups, which is really stupid in my opinion. For people who are supposed to be, these harmless white nerdy guys, and also various other races and affiliations, they seem to be very violent. You ever notice that?
Yeah, somebody even mentioned it when they were critiquing Nostalgia Critics reboot. It's like in his title card, he's holding a gun, and somebody asked, "Why a gun? Why not a microphone or a movie camera or a reel or something that's related to the nostalgic material you review? Why violence? Is random violence really that fucking funny?"
No, I don't. Yeah, that's true, but then again, saying he shouldn't have a gun, technically... Okay, fine, it doesn't make sense in context.
No, it's like, yes, I know he fires a gun, but... Okay?
It does look kind of ridiculous, to be perfectly honest.
Not just that, but... Linkara did it better. By comparison.
Yeah, because his magic gun was part of his character, so him having a gun makes sense.
He even gave the gun a story.
God, don't remind me of that. Oh, shit.
A story that was a ripoff of the first Silent Hill game, but a story nonetheless. With Doug, it's a prop I use when I get angry, quote end.
That's the thing. Guns don't represent violence, not to me at least. To anyone else, fine, whatever. But guns don't represent violence. My problem with having the gun in the intro is just it's a one-time prop. We're like, I'm angry. Ah! That's not part of his whole thing. But that's really just the problem. He's out of ideas, and I don't know what he needs to do. You know? I don't even know if there's anything he can do. The AVGN, all he has to do to remain relevant is he can still be an angry video game nerd. That's fine. But he needs to focus more on the games and less on the... He needs to focus more on the video game part and less on the angry part.
And that's just that. If James wanted, he could make, B movies like, him, Hobo with a Shotgun. Not anything AVGN related, because I hear that movie sucked.
Well, it only sucked because it was a bad idea from the start. There's no way you're gonna... This is why... When I saw the trailer, I knew it sucked right then and there. But from what I've heard, the story was generic, the story was poorly paced, and poorly acted. The problem is, you do not make a movie based upon an internet character, for one, and for another, it just doesn't work at all. I get what he was trying to do. He wanted to do something kind of like Tenacious D, even if he knew they existed or not. Tenacious D was an act on HBO in the late 90s. Then they made a movie in like 2004 about Tenacious D forming, and it's like a prequel to the show. I get that. It worked, because they were... But like the AVGN character just isn't... The AVGN character isn't Jack Black. Let me put it that way. You can't compare it at all. But ultimately, I think really a lot of these reviewers, as I know I was going to do it, when I actually was a legitimate reviewer still, I was going to move away from the whole reviewing aspect for any sort of movie and just do a movie. I mean, like Ashen's quest for the game child. The Linkara movie, I think, might not necessarily just be based upon Linkara. At least I hope it's not. I hope he just does a movie. Then again, I don't know. I haven't followed any of the news. Because you're really limiting your audience to just your fans, okay? What I really have always figured would be the best idea is you use your fans, you use your influence as this really popular internet guy to making a movie, a legitimate movie, like a science fiction movie, fantasy movie, dramatic film, any number of things, that much easier to get exposure, Like you make a science fiction movie, Quest to the Astro Men, Like maybe make a little crappy B movie. It's not crappy, but it's intentionally crappy. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. You don't have to explain it to me.
So like you make one of those, and everybody's like, "Ah, ha, ha, that's so funny." That works. Do that. Don't make Suburban Nights where it's the Nostalgia Critic dressed up like Link. What?
And that's the problem. They didn't think in advance. They didn't ask themselves, what will I be doing in 10 years? Because here's the thing. When you're an entertainer, you gotta have material. It's even worse when you're a comedian. Because comedy is one of the worst things to try and keep fresh. If you're not Robin Williams, if you're not Gabriel Iglesias, if you're not... I almost said George Carlin. Oh, God, I can't believe I listened to him ages ago. But anyways, if you're not Robin Williams or anything of the like, you will eventually get stale and forgotten. Okay, question. Who here has seen Dane Cook's latest performance?
Who's Dane Cook?
I got an even better question. Who the fuck remembers Dane Cook's last performance? That's the problem. Eventually you just... how about Daniel Tosh? Has he been relevant ever since he made that rape joke?
Was he the guy who made Toshi Station?
No, Tosh.0.
Okay.
Because when you're an entertainer comedian, that's one of the worst fucking things you can be, especially on the internet, where you don't get your 15 minutes of fame, you get a minute if you're lucky.
Pretty much. Because how many people have thought of Gangnam Style?
My God. But my point is like...
Wait, no, before I forget. Or Thrift Shop.
I'm gonna pop some tags. Got $20 in my pocket.
That one. Who remembers that?
Yeah.
Or better yet, something even older. Who remembers Call Me Maybe?
Oh, Jesus, don't remind me of that thing. I played so many times on the fucking radio, it got on my nerves. But what was I gonna say? The Nostalgia Critic just got lucky. Because remember when he quit his job with the I quit painted on
I'm not
his...
sure how real that was.
I don't know. But my point is, he basically, at that point, I think in his mind, he solidified, this is what I want to be doing on the internet. And then came demo reel, and then it went. Oh fucking dear. Because now he's just here to entertain his fans who have an enormous amount of cash to throw at him, apparently. Because they gave him $96,000.
Yeah, and that doesn't make much sense. I mean, why just take that money without really making so... Once again, he could have made a crappy B movie, Invasion of the Atomic Men. I keep going to that. And people would have ate that shit up.
The thing is, he had to cover his in-the-red bank account. But you know what? Your idea is actually better. Instead of promising to do 3 game shows with, 50 episodes each, or 40 to 50 episodes each, he could have just promised to make a movie, taken the $47,000 he needed to cover his bank account, and used the rest to make a fucking B movie.
That's what they all should have done. Like, Kick-Ass here. How much money went into that?
As far as I know, everybody paid for their own fare.
So yeah, I mean, instead of making it something Nostalgia Critic based, just make that the movie. Make it Invasion of Molossia or something. Do anything like that. Make it a legit B movie that somebody that's not an internet Dinsian might want to see. Exactly. And I think there's enough talent there that they could do it. I mean, think about this.
There might be if they can get their heads out of their asses for more than a second.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about this. You could have... Okay, the first 2 are going to make sense. Have Spoonie write it, because Spoonie's actually a halfway decent writer from what I've seen. Because he used to post... he did it twice. 2 screenplays for movies that were actually pretty good. Then you have Lindsay Ellis do all the actual, production work, like direct the film, and then have Doug sort of just... Honestly, I don't think Doug should be even involved in the movie itself other than just sort of like a producer. Because I don't think he has the acting chops necessary to act in it, and I don't think he has the directing ability to direct it. I think it should just be, I'm the producer, here's the money, I'll use my popularity and influence to get this movie out there so we can all profit from it.
Exactly. He could have just become the new Hollywood producer. And just make Channel Awesome a B movie production company where he helps up and coming, movie makers, start off. That, and he could be like, it's like, yeah, we'll provide you with the marketing with this, a team, blah, blah, blah. Lindsay Ellis, Spoonie, we'll provide you with a team that you'll be working with. And in return, it's like, we get a percentage off the movie if it, plays or some shit. I don't know. This is just me thinking off the top of my head. That could have been a better long-term plan than, I'm going to scream at the camera.
Exactly, because... that's going to get old after a while. Reviewing it in and of itself, I don't think it'll ever get old. The way I do my reviews, I could still be doing it 50 years from now. But screaming at the camera for nostalgic movies in the 80s is going to get old. I'm surprised it's still relevant today. I'm not sure how much longer that guy with the glasses is going to last, just because, well, their website looks like crap. Most of their famous performers have moved on to their own things. And that game show bombed so bad, it's not even funny.
It bombed so bad, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are sending relief.
And now the Japanese will invade you, not me.
Well, let them come.
Hey, they got helicopter carriers.
Yeah, well, we got the fucking Chinese over here. It'll be World War fucking 3.
It always has to start in the Balkans, doesn't it?
Fucking always and forever.
You guys just couldn't leave well enough alone.
Nope. Franz Ferdinand was just the beginning, my friend.
But I think with that, before the Chinese declare World War III, because of something in the Balkans again, I'm just going to be signing off. This is General Watts.
And the M-Man.
Always telling you to remember, duck and cover.